Welcome to today's story. Okay, so picture this. You're at the Seoul World Martial Arts Expo. Huge event.
Prestigious, global.
Exactly. And the whole vibe is, skill, discipline, respect for tradition.
Right, the air's thick with it.
Then, kind of out of nowhere,
Yeah.
this bomb drops. Marcus Lee gets up on stage.
5-time Taekwondo champ, known for, well, talent, but also a bit of arrogance.
A bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And he just lays into David Rothwell, recently deceased, calls him a fraud.
Wow. A glorified stuntman, I think was the phrase. Said he just taught actors how to fake fight.
That's it. Just brutal. And he doesn't stop there. He goes directly after Jason Statham.
Rothwell's student, right, the action star.
Yeah. Lee sneers. Basically, it says Rothwell only taught Statham how to pretend to get hit and fall dramatically for the cameras.
Oof. That's incredibly disrespectful, especially mentioning someone who just passed away.
He even dares Rothwell's ghost to confront him. Can you imagine?
The tension must have been unbelievable.
Totally. And right then, Jason Statham. He stands up, not flashy, just quiet intensity.
The action star himself.
And what happens next? Well, it's this clash of worlds. Respect versus ego. And really a testament to a mentor's impact.
It immediately sets up this fascinating contrast, doesn't it? The competitive champion versus the Hollywood star, but both with martial arts roots.
Absolutely. We're going to dive into all of that. But hey, before we get deeper, if you're finding this interesting,
Yeah, do us a quick favor.
please like this, subscribe if you want more deep dives like this one.
And definitely leave a comment below. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, if this intro got you curious, just drop a wonderful in the comments.
And if maybe it didn't quite grab you, hey, let us know with it too.
Your feedback honestly helps us figure out what kind of stories you find valuable.
It really does.
Okay. Now, please listen to this story. So let's unpack this whole thing. What does it all really mean?
Well, it's definitely more than just some guy shouting at an expo.
Right. You heard the story. Marcus Lee's public denouncement, these really dismissive words about David Rothwell and Jason Statham.
It really taps into a certain mindset you sometimes find in, let's say, more traditional or competitive martial arts circles.
How so?
Well, there can be this view sometimes that what happens on screen in movies isn't authentic, that it's separate from the real discipline.
Okay. The flashy Hollywood stuff versus the hard graft of competition.
Exactly. So Lee's outburst, while pretty extreme, kind of reflects that underlying tension about what counts as true skill or mastery.
Then you get Jason Statham stepping onto the mat. And this is key. He's known for movies, sure, but he actually has a background. Rothwell mentored him.
Right. And this wasn't a movie scene. It was real.
We heard about Lee's Taekwondo, flashy, technically brilliant, probably great for scoring points.
Yeah, optimized for that specific competitive rule set.
And then Jason's approach. It seems much more pragmatic.
Yeah.
Efficient, rooted in respect, control.
Definitely looked like Rothwell's influence there. Less about the points, maybe more about, well, ending the confrontation effectively.
It's like comparing sport fighting with something closer to self-defense principles almost.
Sort of, yeah. That emphasis on control and neutralization rather than just racking up points. It speaks to a different philosophy of training.
And that short exchange really highlighted it, didn't it? Jason gets a first hit, draws blood.
Then Lee scores his point using his sport technique.
But then Jason gets the takedown. Controlled finish, no unnecessary damage.
And the words afterwards were just as important.
Yeah, Jason telling Lee, control, not victory. Respect the dead. That carried so much weight.
It really elevates it beyond just winning or losing a brief scuffle. It's about the why behind the martial art.
The ethics of it.
Precisely. The discipline, the humility, honoring those who came before you. Statham and likely Rothwell saw martial arts as more than just physical fighting. It's a code.
Which makes you question, what is the ultimate goal? Just winning or something deeper?
A question worth asking.
And the reaction afterwards was telling. Marcus actually accepted Jason's hand.
Yeah, a moment of perhaps dawning understanding. Or at least respect.
And the crowd described as martial arts purists, they applauded. They recognized something important happened.
They saw beyond the belt ranks or the Hollywood fame, maybe. They saw the principle demonstrated.
And then Helen Rothwell giving Jason her late husband's first black belt.
Wow, that's hugely symbolic. The black belt isn't just about skill level. It represents lineage, tradition, the core values passed down.
So her giving it to Jason was like,
An endorsement. saying this is what David stood for. This quiet strength, this control, this respect. That's the true measure, not just competition wins or public persona.
Passing the torch, really.
In a very profound way.
And Jason's final words to those young martial artists there,
Yeah.
emphasizing that it's about preventing fights.
Acting with humility, with truth.
Yeah. That's a powerful takeaway that goes way beyond just kicking and punching.
Absolutely. It reinforces that ideal of martial arts leading to peace, to de-escalation, using skill responsibly. Character matters.
So it leaves us and you listening with something to think about, right? In a world that often rewards the loud, the flashy, the ego, where do you actually see those principles of humility, of true mastery?
Where does substance shine through over spectacle?
Yeah. Think about how this story might resonate beyond martial arts. Maybe in your own job, your own life.
What does it really mean to honor a mentor's legacy? Or just to act with integrity when challenged?
Lots to mull over there.
The hushed atmosphere of the prestigious Seoul World Martial Arts Expo shattered like glass when Marcus Lee, the arrogant 5-time Taekwondo world champion, grabbed the microphone and uttered words that would forever change his life. David Rothwell was nothing but a fraud. The international audience collectively gasped. Marcus, infamous for his technical brilliance and equally notorious ego, stood center stage with a predatory gaze scanning the crowd. His voice dripped with contempt as he continued. He taught Hollywood actors how to fake punches and falls, just another glorified stuntman with a whistle who Hollywood mistakenly called master. In the front row, Jason Statham sat motionless, his face betraying nothing while something dangerous stirred behind his steel blue eyes. David Rothwell had been more than Jason's mentor. He had been a father figure who had passed away just 12 months earlier. A humble man who had trained both championship fighters and Hollywood choreographers, Rothwell was the reason Jason stood where he was today. Marcus's smile widened as he fed off the tension rippling through the room. He trained Jason Statham right, he sneered, pointing directly at the action star, taught him how to pretend to get hit and fall dramatically for the cameras. Nervous laughter peppered the audience while television cameras swiveled toward Jason, who remained eerily calm. Then came the words that crossed the final line, words that would haunt Marcus for years to come. Leaning into the microphone with malicious intent, he drawled, "If Rothwell's ghost is watching from wherever washed-up stunt coordinators go, tell him to come shut me up himself." The laughter died instantly. A heavy silence blanketed the expo hall as Jason slowly rose from his seat. Not with rage, not with haste, but with the measured composure of a predator who had just selected its prey. The crowd fell completely silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on the unfolding confrontation. Marcus tilted his head with mock confusion, his voice cutting through the stillness. "Oh, did I touch a nerve, movie star?" Jason's response came low and clear, each word precise as a surgeon's blade. "Say whatever you want about me. But David Rothwell taught more about honor in a single breath than you've demonstrated in your entire career." The Seoul International Martial Arts Expo pulsed with energy unlike any other gathering in the martial arts world. Inside the magnificent glass-domed convention center, an architectural marvel with its soaring ceilings and natural light filtering through, thousands of martial arts enthusiasts from every corner of the globe mingled in a celebration of discipline and skill. Overhead, massive digital screens displayed highlights of past tournaments, while traditional Korean drums echoed through the hall at scheduled intervals, creating a rhythmic heartbeat for the event. Jason Statham moved through this spectacle with quiet dignity, dressed in a simple black Henley and dark jeans, his understated presence a stark contrast to the flashy entourages surrounding other celebrities. Though recognized by everyone, he acknowledged fans with only a slight nod or brief handshake, his focus seemingly elsewhere. He had come not for publicity but for something far more personal, to honor the legacy of David Rothwell, the man who had shaped not just his career but his character. The main exhibition hall had been transformed into a temple of martial excellence. Circular mats positioned throughout hosted simultaneous demonstrations, karate masters breaking boards with precision strikes, jiu-jitsu experts demonstrating fluid submissions, and traditional weapons specialists spinning nunchaku and staffs with hypnotic skill. The air smelled of liniment oil, polished wood, and determination. In the VIP section, legends from various disciplines sat in quiet conversation, Olympic medalists, MMA champions, and revered teachers whose white hair marked decades of dedicated practice. Among them sat 3 of David Rothwell's former students, now successful stunt coordinators and fight choreographers in their own right, who had flown in from 3 different continents specifically to witness this tribute to their teacher. He never wanted recognition, one whispered to Jason as he took his seat, but he deserved it more than anyone. Jason nodded, his eyes fixed on the central stage where the special tribute panel was about to begin. The moderator, a respected martial arts journalist with salt and pepper hair and a voice that commanded attention, stepped to the microphone. Today, we honor those who bridge the gap between traditional martial arts and modern application, she began. Those who preserve the soul of combat while adapting to changing times. As images of David Rothwell appeared on the screens, showing him training fighters, working with actors, and receiving his own master certification in 1978, a hush fell over the crowd. For a moment, Jason's stoic expression softened, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly at the sight of his mentor, demonstrating a perfect spinning back kick despite being in his 60s. That respectful silence shattered when Marcus Ley scoffed audibly into his microphone. Sitting at the opposite end of the panel table, the Korean Taekwondo champion's disdain was palpable. With all due respect, Marcus said, his English perfect and cutting, we're conflating entertainment with martial arts. Hollywood stunts are choreographed dance, not fighting. The moderator attempted to maintain balance. Different applications require different standards of excellence, Marcus interrupted, his eyes finding Jason in the front row, or different excuses for mediocrity. Attention rippled through the audience like a current, phones raised higher, capturing the unexpected confrontation. The other panelists, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu pioneer and a former Special Forces combat instructor, exchanged uncomfortable glances. Behind Marcus stood 3 of his students, black belts with perfect posture and matching uniforms, who nodded at their master's words with manufactured synchronicity. Their presence formed a visual backdrop to his authority, a carefully orchestrated display of loyalty that somehow felt hollow against Jason's solitary presence. Rothwell taught illusion, Marcus continued, his voice rising with practiced precision. I teach reality, there's a difference. The moderator glanced nervously toward the event organizers at the side of the stage. This was rapidly spiraling beyond the respectful discussion they had planned, but before she could redirect, Marcus stood up, commanding the stage with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged. Since we have his star pupil here, he gestured toward Jason, perhaps we should discuss what real martial arts looks like versus what sells movie tickets. In that moment, as cameras pivoted and the audience held its collective breath, Jason's eyes met Marcus's across the distance. The tension between them was almost visible, a thread of inevitable confrontation pulled taut by pride on one side and quiet resolve on the other. The tension in the exhibition hall had become a living, breathing entity. Marcus Lee's arrogance hung in the air like a toxic cloud as he stepped away from the panel table and onto the demonstration mat. With theatrical flair, he shed his formal blazer, revealing the pristine white dabak beneath, his black belt wrapped with precision around his narrow waist. The overhead lights caught the gold embroidery of his name and 5 championship stars that adorned his uniform collar. Hollywood teaches actors to fall, Marcus announced, voice amplified by the wireless microphone clipped to his lapel. I teach warriors to make others fall. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the audience. Several of Marcus's students, positioned strategically throughout the crowd, applauded with synchronized enthusiasm. Jason remained motionless at the edge of the mat, his weathered hands hanging loosely at his sides. The cut below his eye had stopped bleeding, but the dried blood remained, a crimson badge of the first exchange. Unlike Marcus, Jason made no grand gestures, no appeals to the audience. His focus had narrowed to a laser point, assessing his opponent with the cold calculation of a predator. Perhaps, Marcus continued, performing a perfect spinning hook kick that stopped just inches from an imaginary opponent's face, Mr. Statham would like to demonstrate what his master taught him, something beyond movie magic. He punctuated this with a series of rapid-fire punches that cut through the air with impressive speed and precision. The moderator stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable. This event wasn't intended to. It's all right, Jason interrupted, voice calm but carrying. I accept. A hush fell over the crowd. Parents pulled their children closer. Veteran martial artists leaned forward in their seats. The expo's director whispered urgently into his radio, unsure whether to stop what was unfolding or let it continue. Jason stepped onto the mat, removing his watch and placing it carefully in his pocket. He rolled his shoulders once, loosening muscles that had seen decades of real combat training, not just for cameras. His movements were economical, nothing wasted, nothing for show. In David's dojo, Jason spoke clearly enough for the front rows to hear. We had a saying, technique without respect is just violence. His eyes never left Marcus. He would be disappointed in how you've represented our art today. Marcus's smile faltered momentarily before returning with doubled intensity. He circled Jason, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet, hands held high in a traditional Taekwondo guard position. Rules, Jason asked simply. Marcus laughed. You're the actor, I'm the fighter, you tell me. Jason nodded once. First blood's already been drawn, he said, touching the cut on his cheek. Let's make it simple, point fighting, first to 3 clean strikes. Marcus scoffed, or first to surrender. He turned to the audience. Watch carefully. This is the difference between movies and reality. Without warning, Marcus launched forward with explosive speed, executing a textbook-perfect double roundhouse combination, low then high. The attack was lightning fast, precisely the kind of technique that had won him championships and the adoration of purists. But Jason wasn't there to receive it. He had shifted just 6 inches to the right, allowing both kicks to slice through empty air. The movement was so subtle, so efficient, that many in the audience missed it entirely. Marcus, overextended and suddenly off balance, pivoted to recover, but Jason was already inside his guard. What happened next would be replayed millions of times across social media platforms worldwide. The confrontation between hollow showmanship and authentic martial spirit was about to reach its inevitable climax. What unfolded next would be replayed on social media platforms across the globe for months to come. The exhibition hall fell into an eerie silence as Marcus Lee recovered his balance, his face tightening with the first flickers of doubt. The invincible champion had missed, not by inches, but by the precise calculation of a man who understood the difference between performance and combat. Lucky dodge, Marcus spat, circling Jason with renewed focus. The confidence in his voice had diminished slightly, replaced by a sharper edge. The overhead lights caught beads of sweat forming along his hairline, despite the climate-controlled environment. Jason maintained his position, feet shoulder-width apart, hands held loosely at mid-height, not in any recognizable fighting stance from any particular discipline, but in what veterans in the audience recognized as the ready position of someone who had learned to fight in environments where rules were secondary to survival. First point still unclaimed, Jason remarked quietly, his London accent cutting through the tension. Marcus nodded curtly before launching into a textbook-perfect combination, a faint jab followed by a lightning-fast roundhouse kick aimed at Jason's ribs. The technique was flawless, executed with championship precision, the kind that had earned Marcus countless trophies displayed in his soul dodging. But Jason wasn't fighting for trophies. In a move so subtle many spectators missed it, Jason shifted his weight 6 inches to the left while simultaneously bringing his right forearm down in a tight arc. The impact was audible, a dull thud as Jason's forearm connected with Marcus's shin just below the knee, redirecting the kick's trajectory downward where it struck nothing but air. Before Marcus could recover, Jason stepped forward, his left hand shooting out not as a punch but as a palm strike that connected solidly with Marcus's sternum. The contact wasn't dramatic or theatrical. It didn't send the Korean champion flying backward as it might in a movie. Instead, it simply pushed him off balance, disrupting his center of gravity and forcing him to take 3 stumbling steps backward to avoid falling. Point, called one of the veteran martial artists seated nearby, unable to contain himself. Several others nodded in agreement. Marcus's face darkened as murmurs rippled through the audience. This was not going according to his script. He glanced briefly toward his students, whose expressions had shifted from smugness to concern. A lucky tap, Marcus declared loudly, though his voice lacked its previous certainty. Nothing that would count in a real match. Jason said nothing, resuming his ready position. His eyes never left Marcus, never blinked, never revealed anything beyond absolute focus. The cut below his eye had fully dried now, a dark crimson line that served as a visible reminder of what was at stake. Marcus attacked again, this time with a blinding series of kicks, front, side, spinning back, each executed with technical perfection and championship speed. The display was impressive, drawing gasps from younger audience members who had never witnessed such precise technique in person. Jason weathered the storm, blocking when necessary, evading when possible, his movements economical and purposeful. There was nothing flashy in his defense, nothing that would make highlight reels or demonstration videos, just pure efficiency. When Marcus paused to reset, breathing heavily from the exertion of his offensive flurry, Jason countered. His movement was so quick that many in the audience missed it entirely, a simple step forward combined with a short, powerful right cross that connected with Marcus's jaw with mathematical precision. The impact wasn't cinematic. Marcus didn't spin dramatically or fly backward. Instead, his head snapped back slightly, his eyes momentarily losing focus as his body registered the shock of genuine impact. For perhaps the first time in years, Marcus Lee had been hit cleanly in the face by someone who wasn't trying to score points but to deliver a message. "Two," Jason said quietly. The crowd erupted not in cheers or jeers, but in a collective gasp of recognition. They were witnessing something rare, the collision of two worlds that rarely met on equal terms. The martial arts of the screen and the martial arts of the ring were converging in a moment of unscripted truth. Marcus touched his jaw, genuine surprise registering in his eyes. The blow had hurt, not enough to incapacitate, but enough to awaken something primal. Gone was the showman's smile, replaced by the focus of a predator who suddenly realizes he is not at the top of the food chain. "No holding back now," Marcus growled, dropping into a lower stance. His previous flourishes disappeared, replaced by the compact, efficient posture of a genuine fighter. For the first time since the confrontation began, Marcus Lee was taking Jason Statham seriously. The change in approach nearly caught Jason off guard. Marcus launched forward with explosive power, executing a combination that blended Taekwondo's precision with street fighting's brutality. A low kick to Jason's lead leg, followed immediately by a lunging elbow strike aimed at his temple. Jason blocked the kick, but the elbow grazed his forehead, opening a second cut that immediately began streaming blood down into his right eye. The crowd gasped as crimson droplets spattered the mat. "One for me," Marcus announced, satisfaction creeping back into his voice. "Not so easy when I'm actually trying, is it, actor?" Jason wiped the blood from his eye with his forearm, leaving a red streak across his skin. For the first time, a hint of a smile touched the corner of his mouth, not a smile of pleasure or amusement, but the recognition of something inevitable. "David always said," Jason spoke clearly enough for the front rows to hear, "that a real fighter reveals himself when he tastes his own blood." What happened next occurred so quickly that security footage would later be analyzed frame by frame on martial arts forums worldwide. Jason stepped forward, not with aggression or rage, but with the calm certainty of someone completing a long-practiced equation. His lead hand extended not as a strike but as a distraction, drawing Marcus's attention high while Jason's right leg swept in a tight arc, connecting with the back of Marcus's knee. As the Korean champion's leg buckled, Jason's left hand gripped Marcus's dabak at the shoulder, controlling his descent not to throw him dramatically, but to position him precisely. Marcus, sensing the danger too late, attempted to counter with a desperate upper elbow, but Jason had already shifted his weight, placing his center of gravity exactly where it needed to be. Using Marcus's own momentum and weight distribution against him, Jason executed a throw that wasn't flashy or acrobatic. It was brutally efficient, sending Marcus to the mat with a controlled impact that knocked the wind from his lungs. Before the champion could recover, Jason followed him down, securing a position that neutralized Marcus's kicking advantage. With clinical precision, Jason applied pressure to Marcus's shoulder, not enough to injure, but enough to demonstrate complete control. "That's 3, Jason said quietly, close enough that only Marcus and those nearest the mat could hear. "David taught me that control matters more than victory. I could have broken your collarbone just now. Remember that the next time you speak ill of the dead." Jason released his hold and stood, offering his hand to the fallen champion. The gesture wasn't theatrical or meant for cameras. It was the simple respect one fighter offers another after truth has been established. For a moment Marcus lay there, pride warring with reality. The hall remained silent, hundreds of witnesses holding their collective breath. Then, slowly, Marcus reached up and took Jason's hand, allowing himself to be pulled to his feet. No words were exchanged in that moment, none were necessary. The two men stood face to face, blood on both their faces, the truth between them now undeniable. Marcus offered a slight bow, not the exaggerated performance from before, but a genuine acknowledgement. Jason returned it with equal sincerity. As Jason turned to leave the mat, an elderly Korean master seated in the front row stood up, his weathered hands coming together in deliberate applause. One by one, others joined until the hall resonated with the sound of respect, not for the spectacle they had witnessed, but for the principles it had affirmed. David Rothwell's legacy hadn't needed defending after all, it had simply needed demonstrating. As Jason exited the exhibition hall into the dim corridor, the silence behind him slowly gave way to a rising murmur. Emergency medical technicians rushed past him toward the mat where Marcus Lee remained, dazed and disoriented, his pristine white dabak now stained with crimson splatters. Jason didn't look back, there was nothing left to prove, nothing left to say. The cut above his eye throbbed with each heartbeat, a physical reminder of the price sometimes paid for standing up for what matters. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows along the concrete walls. Jason moved with purpose toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. He'd come to honor David Rothwell, not to create a spectacle, yet somehow the day had transformed into something neither man would have wanted. David had always preached restraint, control, and humility, virtues that seemed increasingly rare in the world of competitive martial arts. "Mr. Statham," a voice called from behind. Jason turned to find a slender woman in her 70s standing several paces away. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and despite her age, she stood with the straight-backed posture of someone who had spent decades on the mat. "I'm Helen Rothwell." Recognition flashed across Jason's face as he realized he was standing before David's widow. He bowed slightly, a gesture of genuine respect rather than performance. "David spoke of you often," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "He would have been disappointed by the spectacle today, but proud of how you carried yourself." Jason nodded, unsure what to say. The adrenaline was beginning to fade, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness that had nothing to do with physical exertion. "He always said you understood the most important lesson," Helen continued, stepping closer. From her handbag she withdrew a worn black belt, its edges frayed from decades of use. "That the measure of martial skill isn't found in trophies or demonstrations, but in knowing when to fight and when to walk away." She extended the belt toward him. "He wanted you to have this. I was going to give it to you privately, but after today, it seems fitting now." Jason accepted the belt with both hands, feeling the weight of its history, not just in years, but in the philosophy it represented. David's first black belt, earned in 1968, before championships, before Hollywood, before the world knew his name. "Thank you," Jason said simply, words inadequate for the moment. As Helen turned to leave, a group of young martial artists approached cautiously from the main hall, smartphones held discreetly at their sides. Their expressions mixed awe with uncertainty, unsure if they should approach. "Mr. Statham," one of them finally ventured, a boy no older than 16 with a blue belt tied around his waist. Would you mind telling us what Master Rothwell taught that wasn't in the videos or seminars?" Jason looked at the small gathering, seeing not just fans or martial arts enthusiasts, but the next generation, those who would carry forward either the substance of the art or merely its appearance. In that moment, he understood why David had spent his final years teaching rather than performing. "He taught me that martial arts isn't about winning fights," Jason said, his voice low but clear enough for all to hear. "It's about preventing them. And when prevention fails, it's about ending conflict quickly, without ego or showmanship." He unzipped his gym bag and carefully placed David's belt inside. "Marcus Lee has technical skill that few can match," he continued, surprising the group with his generosity toward his opponent. But he forgot that martial arts began as a path toward humility, not a platform for pride. David would say we need both technical excellence and spiritual growth. The youngest among them, a girl with determined eyes, asked, "But how do you know when to fight, when it matters enough?" Jason considered her question, touching the dried blood on his cheek. "When it's about defending someone who can't defend themselves, when it's about truth, not ego. David used to say, if you're fighting to prove something about yourself, you've already lost." As the impromptu gathering dispersed, Jason continued toward the exit, David's belt nestled in his bag, a tangible connection to a legacy built not on spectacle but on substance. Outside, the evening air carried the scent of rain. News vans had already begun to gather, alerted by the viral videos spreading across social networks. Headlines were being written, narratives constructed, lessons simplified or distorted. But the true lesson, the one David Rothwell had lived and Jason had demonstrated, couldn't be captured in clickbait headlines or 15-second clips. It existed in the quiet dignity of walking away when victory was already assured, in the respect shown to a fallen opponent, and in the understanding that true martial arts transforms not just the body, but the character of those who practice it with sincerity. As Jason slipped quietly through a side exit, avoiding the gathering press, he knew that tomorrow's stories would focus on the confrontation. But for those who truly understood, today wasn't about who won the fight, it was about which values would endure when the applause faded and the lights went dark.